Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the new Gems of War faction of the Duergaroth. So this place is pretty relevant, ends up counting as Duergaroth. So if you haven't gotten 5, 10, or 20 star Duergaroth, well now 20 star is possible, each one of those end up giving a permanent +1 magic. So that's going to be pretty good for gaining additional magic. As far as the faction itself, it's interesting in that it adds new troops that have a block mechanic. This is a mechanic that, of course, has been in the underworld since the start. However, we haven't really had a way to bring it outside of the underworld until now. As far as the troops, there are two particularly noteworthy ones in this regard. The main one being the Deep Dwarf. He ends up basically being able to create infinite stone blocks, meaning you could theoretically fill the entire board with stone blocks if you wanted to, and then get an infinite loop off of it. Would it really be that viable to do so? No, it would take forever, but it's the first step in starting to get block mechanics outside of Underworld, so interesting to see. The most useful troop outside of the game mode itself, and just in general, is definitely going to be the Legend. It has a interesting mechanic I would love to see with additional stats effects into the future. Basically what it does is whenever an enemy casts, it will end up doing something, specifically here, a stun. So whenever they end up doing a cast, you'll keep getting a stun every single time. This will be pretty decent against Beatrix, however, it does have obviously many other applicable instances, since basically any team that spams a lot that doesn't have cleanse are basically just going to remain 4 times stunned simply from casting a bunch. So it's a great counter that automatically counters without the AI needing to specifically do anything. It's just the enemy does its thing, and then boom, it just gets to counter it. So pretty interesting to see how this ends up panning out into the future. Not just a stun one, but additional ones that might come in. And also has a pretty decent true damage. Not really particularly high compared to other options, but for a Delve troop, it will definitely be able to get the Pure faction done. And other than that, the Deep Golem's okay. You're mostly going to be using it for a tank for the Pure faction. However, outside of it, you're probably not going to be using it much, though it is technically a 4 times barrier option if you've been looking for a different one to end up utilizing. As far as the layout itself, it's actually, to my understanding, I believe the 3rd best faction in the entire game as far as overall loot. So if you're looking to keep this thing permanently at level 20, it might be somewhat worth doing so, if you're still looking to keep a kingdom pretty low. The only two that I believe are higher is City of Thieves, which is the highest, and Hall of Guardians. But this is a 4 treasure room. However, it's far away 4 treasure room, and the rooms prior aren't really particularly high multipliers for the most part. But basically, these 4 rooms right over here are all treasure room. This one right over here, this one, and the 2 below. 100% of the time will always be a treasure room, and obviously you take those last. Ideally, take the Cedric first if one of them is Cedric, and then take the other 3, and just get all of your gold loot right at the end, which is generally the order that you do it in. So it's basically a straightforward path. You go here, 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 here. You take your treasure rooms from highest to lowest as far as multiplier, and then you go take out the boss. Also, what's really nice about this layout is it's a perfect 3 room to go straight to the final. So if you're looking to rush it down just to get the event done quickly, you can simply do so by doing the first room, the middle room, and then just going straight to the boss. So pretty nice in that regard. As far as the weapon, it's basically just a weaker version of Anu Scepter. So for the most part, you're likely not really going to be messing around with it, but it's basically right over here. So it's 15 mana cost Anu Scepter, so 6 higher mana cost, but it uses 2 colors. It gets to drain mana from all enemies. It is boosted by stone blocks, however, that's very rare that you're going to have a lot of them on the board unless you're specifically doing factions, and it destroys a bunch of a color, and generally it's going to be all of the color, which is basically what Anu Scepter ends up doing. Overall, I personally feel like Anu Scepter will be a little bit better due to the additional effects that it has, and I really don't foresee this thing really being that viable. Also, all of its perks that it gets pretty much only hit first slot with that 10% chance to make it into a toad, all of which are pretty bad in accumulation. So overall, I'd pretty much just ignore this. You'd only really get the weapon, obviously, if you're just going for pure faction and kind of getting it along the way. As far as actually using the weapon, you wouldn't really bother. It's basically just for completionist sake, just to simply have it. Anyways, that's pretty much everything as far as the rundown for the faction. As far as teams, here's everything that we ended up running through. I haven't done pure faction yet, but we'll be doing that tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a stream, as we always do. However, as far as what we ran, for the earlier battles, we end up running Mountain Crusher into Guard's Avatar. If you don't have Guard's Avatar, you could just run Gargoyles. You could run any heavy AoE, basically just trying to find something to quick kill. You could easily feed it with Leprechaun since you have access to the color. You can end up doing a Ketris team. You can end up building into a Thrall, mana accumulate a bunch. You can also go Leprechaun and end up mana accumulating. Just go for a very big explosion and just feed mana into everything. Yasmin's Pride ends up doing HP booster. She also came in a couple of weeks ago if you didn't already get it then. So there was another opportunity to do so. And if you don't have a second Ketris, you can just go for another mana accumulation option with it. For the higher range, you do have access to both Iron Gut and Zugoff, so you can build an Iron Gut Zugoff team. Of course, you could build entirely around Iron Gut and use a curse. You do have access to things like Cursed Effigy for the faction, so you can end up running it down like that. This really depends on which way you want to end up going about it. And aside from that, as far as Peer Faction, you can end up doing it with the Deep Golem. This is definitely going to be required, so you can have it as a frontline tank. It has two things that help you frontline tank. One is that it has a barrier, and you can end up barriering your entire team if you explode 4 skulls with it, and it will consistently always get all 4 of them barriered if you end up doing it that way, with specifically 4. And it also has a 50% scar reduction, so this thing's going to be really tanky. You can easily tank with just that. You don't really need a second one. The Deep Dwarf is mostly just here for a bit of mana accumulation, and the Naramel is mostly just going to be used as your main damage source, as he has true damage, and with potion effects that you get from buying tier 7s, you will be able to go hit probably within the hundreds, and basically just kill them that way. It also have a lot of stun, however, that's not the main thing that you'll be using from it, of course, and if worse comes to worst, you do have a Death Mark mechanic, so you have a couple different ways to end up pointing it out. Theoretically, you could even try speeding it up by even using more of this legend. However, I believe this is the overall safest way that you can really go forward with it. Have your 4 times barrier, have your extra mana accumulation, and pretty much just be good to go with the Nire Mirrors doing their thing. But anyways, that is the new faction. If you guys still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. All teams mentioned, of course, will be below as well if you just want to go and copy-paste any of them. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a wonderful weekend. Best of luck at completing out the faction, or keeping it at level 20 if you're keeping it at level 20 forever. Goodbye, everyone.